Everyone thought my battle was over the moment I finally became a mother. But that's exactly when life handed me its cruelest and most terrifying test. My perfectly healthy husband, gone in a flash. Now a haunting uncertainty surrounds my newborn baby and me. After losing everything, do I have what it takes to save the only thing I have left in this ruthless city, or will I be swallowed by the abyss? But why did tragedy strike her again and again? How does a healthy man just drop dead in a single moment? And where does this nightmare end? Can she really survive all alone in this unforgiving world? I'm Sneha, and I'll be walking you through this journey. Let's dive deep into the full details of this heartbreaking yet incredible story of a mother's fight for survival. They say the loudest sound in the world is a scream, but they are wrong. The loudest sound in the world is silence. Specifically, the silence of a delivery room when the crying never starts. I can still close my eyes and be right back there. The sterile smell of the hospital sheets, the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor that had been the soundtrack of my labour, and then the sudden suffocating quiet. It wasn't supposed to end that way. My first pregnancy was textbook. Every checkup, every ultrasound, every kick was a promise that Mark and I were about to step into the rest of our lives. We had the crib set up, a soft white oak we'd picked out at a store downtown. We had the tiny onesies washed and folded, smelling like lavender detergent. We were ready. But in a matter of minutes, the dream unravelled. I remember the doctor's face. That's the thing about bad news. You see it in their eyes before their lips ever move. He didn't look at me. He looked at the nurse, then at the floor, and the air in the room seemed to vanish. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Those 2 words. Just 2 words. But they carried enough weight to crush a human soul. My first child, my son, left us before he ever really arrived. Born sleeping. That's what they call it to make it sound peaceful. But there was no peace in that room. There was only a hollow, ripping pain in my chest that felt like it was tearing me apart from the inside out. I remember holding him. He was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a nose just like Mark's. He was warm, but he was still. I begged him to wake up. I think I screamed it, or maybe I just whispered it. I don't remember, because my mind had fractured somewhere between the delivery and the realisation that I wasn't taking a baby home. Walking out of that hospital was the hardest physical act I've ever performed. I sat in a wheelchair holding a plastic bag with my personal belongings while Mark walked beside me, carrying the empty car seat. That image haunts me. A father, strong and capable, carrying a safety seat designed to protect a life that was already gone. The drive home was a blur of grey highway and rain. Neither of us spoke. What could you say? It's going to be okay? No, that would be a lie. We can try again. No, that felt like a betrayal. So we sat in the silence, listening to the tyres hum against the asphalt, driving back to an apartment that was set up for 3 people, but only housed 2 ghosts. Weeks turned into months. The nursery door stayed closed. I couldn't go in there. I couldn't look at the crib. It felt like a museum exhibit of a life I almost had. Mark was my rock, but I could see the cracks in him too. I'd catch him sometimes standing in the hallway in the middle of the night, just staring at that closed door, his hand hovering over the knob, never turning it. But grief is a strange thing. It hollows you out, but then slowly hope starts to creep back in like a weed growing through concrete. We wanted a family. That desire didn't die with our son. If anything, it burned hotter, fueled by the desperation to fill that void. It took time, but I got pregnant again. The joy wasn't the same this time. It wasn't the naive, bubbly excitement of the first time. It was a cautious, terrified hope. Every cramp made my heart stop. Every time I went to the bathroom, I checked for blood, praying, bargaining with God. Just let this one stay, please. We didn't tell anyone. We didn't buy clothes. We didn't paint the walls. We were superstitious, thinking that if we acknowledged the baby too much, the universe might realise its mistake and take it back. First trimester, clear. Second trimester, clear. I started to breathe again. I started to let myself imagine the future. A little girl this time. We talked about names. We argued playfully about eye colour. 7 months. We were at the 7-month mark. In the world of pregnancy, that feels like the finish line is in sight. You think you're safe. You think the danger zone is miles behind you. But tragedy doesn't care about statistics. It doesn't care about how much you've already suffered. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because I was making coffee, decaf, humming a song. Then the pain hit, not a cramp, a shearing, blinding pain that dropped me to my knees in the kitchen. I called Mark. I don't remember what I said, just that I was screaming his name. The ambulance ride was chaos, but my mind was strangely clear. I knew somewhere deep in my gut the mother's intuition that had failed me once was screaming the truth now. Not again, please, not again. But the universe wasn't listening. I woke up in a recovery room, the anaesthesia wearing off, leaving behind a groggy, sharp reality. Mark was sitting by the bed, his head in his hands. He looked 10 years older than he had that morning. He didn't have to say it, I knew. My daughter was gone. 7 months of growing, of hoping, of loving her, erased. The doctor explained it later, something about a placental abruption, medical terms that sounded like white noise. All I heard was gone. Coming home the second time, that broke something fundamental in me. The first time I was grieving a child. This time I was grieving my faith in life itself. I felt defective. I felt like my body was a graveyard, a place where life went to end, not to begin. I spent days in bed staring at the ceiling fans spinning round and round, counting the rotations 1, 2, 3, just like the years slipping away. Mark tried. God, he tried so hard. He made me soup I didn't eat. He opened the curtains to let in the sun I didn't want to see. One night, about 3 weeks after the second loss, I found Mark in the living room. He was sitting on the floor, surrounded by paperwork, medical bills, funeral costs for a baby who never took a breath. He was crying, silent, shaking sobs that racked his broad shoulders. I realised then that we were drowning. We were two people holding onto a raft that was disintegrating. I can't do this anymore, Sneha, he whispered when he saw me. I can't watch you break like this. I looked at him, my husband, my partner, the man who had held my hand through 2 funerals for children we never got to raise. I saw the exhaustion in his eyes. I saw the fear. But as I looked at him, something sparked in the ashes of my heart. It wasn't hope. It was something darker, something fiercer. It was anger. It was a refusal to let death win. I looked at the empty space in our home where a child should be, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. I crawled over to him and took his face in my hands. We aren't done, Mark, I said, my voice sounding raspy like it belonged to a stranger. I don't care what the doctors say. I don't care about the statistics. I am going to be a mother. I am going to hold a living, breathing baby in these arms. He looked at me scared. Sneha, we can't. Physically, emotionally, I don't know if we can survive another loss. Then we won't lose, I said, a dangerous determination settling in my chest. We fight. We try everything. Science, faith, magic. I don't care. We fight. I didn't know it then, but I had just declared war on destiny. I was about to drag us both into a 4-year battle that would test the limits of our sanity, empty our bank accounts and push our marriage to the absolute brink. The silence of the nursery was loud, yes, but the fire starting in my soul was about to get a whole lot louder. I stood up, wiped the tears from my face and walked to the calendar on the wall. I tore off the page with the due date of the daughter we just lost. Tomorrow, I told Mark, we start looking for a new doctor, the best one in the country. Little did I know, the road ahead wasn't just steep, it was a cliff and we were about to jump. If you have never sat in the waiting room of a fertility clinic, let me paint a picture for you. It is the quietest room on earth. It's a room full of women scrolling through their phones, desperately avoiding eye contact, because if we look at each other, we might see our own terror reflected back. We are all members of a club, but nobody wants to join. The Broken Bodies Club. That became my life. After that second loss, after I made that vow to Mark that we would fight, our lives stopped being about living and started being about cycles. Ovulation cycles, menstrual cycles, IVF cycles. We found a specialist in the city, Dr. Henderson. He had diplomas covering every inch of his wall and a handshake that felt like the cold marble. He told us what we wanted to hear. We can fix this. Science has come a long way. But science, I learned, is expensive and it is painful. I became a pincushion. My morning routine wasn't coffee and toast anymore. It was a syringe and an alcohol wipe. Mark, my poor sweet Mark, had to learn how to administer the shots. I remember the first time his hands were shaking so bad, he dropped the vial. I can't hurt you, Sneha, he said, his voice cracking. I can't be the one to cause you pain. You're not hurting me, I told him, lifting my shirt to reveal a stomach that was already turning shades of purple and yellow from the bruising. You're helping me make a miracle. Just do it. And he did, every morning for months. We went through 3 rounds of IVF. Do you know what that does to a marriage? It turns intimacy into a medical procedure. There was no romance. There was only time. It's time, I'd say, checking the ovulation app on my phone, and we'd look at each other with exhaustion, not desire. We were soldiers on a mission, and the bedroom was the battlefield. And then finally, hope, a positive test. This was the 3rd time. This was supposed to be the charm, right? That's what people say. 3rd time's the charm. I didn't let myself get excited. I didn't smile. I stared at those 2 pink lines with a grim suspicion. But as the weeks went by, the doctors were optimistic. Hormone levels look great, they said. Strong heartbeat, they said. We made it to 12 weeks, the safe zone. We actually went out to dinner to celebrate. We toasted with sparkling water. Mark squeezed my hand across the table and said, "We did it, babe. We actually did it." 3 days later, I woke up and the bed was wet, but it wasn't water. I didn't scream this time. I didn't cry. I just walked into the bathroom, turned on the light and looked at the blood running down my legs. I felt nothing. I was hollow. I was a ghost haunting my own life. When the doctor confirmed the miscarriage, our 3rd child gone, something inside me snapped. Not a loud snap like a bone breaking, but a quiet structural failure like a building collapsing in slow motion. That night, Mark didn't hold me. He sat on the edge of the bed, his back to me, and he didn't move for 4 hours. When he finally turned around, his eyes were red but dry. "I can't do this anymore," he said. And this time it wasn't a question, it was a statement. "I can't watch you kill yourself for this, Sneha. We have to stop. Maybe we aren't meant to be parents." Hearing him say that was worse than the miscarriage. It felt like he was giving up on us. "No," I whispered. "Sneha, look at you," he shouted, startling me. He never shouted, "You are a shell. We are broke. We have spent our savings. We refinanced the car. We are drowning in debt. And for what? For 3 graves? I want my wife back. I want you back." He was right. We were destroyed. But I couldn't stop. It was an obsession now. It was madness. For the next year, we entered what I call the desperation phase. We stopped the IVF because we couldn't afford it anymore, and the doctor said my body needed a break. So I turned to everything. I became that crazy woman. You know the one? I went to a holistic healer in Chinatown who made me drink tea that tasted like dirt and old bark. I did acupuncture until I looked like a porcupine. I changed my diet. No gluten, no dairy, no sugar, no joy. I bought crystals. A woman with a master's degree who believes in science bought a piece of rose quartz and slept with it under my pillow because a blog on the internet said it boosted fertility. I dragged Mark to a spiritual retreat in Sedona where we had to sit in a sweat lodge and release our trauma. I saw him sitting there, sweat dripping down his nose, looking at me with a mix of pity and love. He did it all. He drank the tea, he drove me to the appointments, he never complained even though I knew he thought I had lost my mind. Maybe I had, but every month the period came and every month a little piece of me died. 4 years of this hell. Friends stopped inviting us to baby showers. They knew it was too painful for me, and frankly I think my grief made them uncomfortable. I became isolated. I would walk through the grocery store, see a mother with a screaming toddler and feel a jealous rage so hot it frightened me. You don't know how lucky you are, I'd think. I would give anything to have a screaming child. Then came the silence, the acceptance. We stopped trying. We stopped the tea. We stopped the tracking apps. We just existed. We were a childless couple in our mid-30s, working our corporate jobs, coming home to a clean, quiet apartment and watching Netflix until we fell asleep. It was in that silence, 2 years after the 3rd loss, that I started feeling off. I was tired, bone tired. I thought it was just depression or maybe the flu. I was nauseous in the mornings, but I ignored it. I refused to let my mind go there. I had been tricked too many times by my own body. Phantom symptoms, they call it. But then I missed my period 1 day, 2 days, 5 days. I didn't tell Mark. I couldn't put him through that roller coaster again. I bought the test on my way home from work. I hid it in my purse like it was contraband. I waited until Mark went for his evening run. I locked the bathroom door. I peed on the stick. I set it on the sink. I didn't look at it. I went and started the shower, letting the steam fill the room. I brushed my teeth. I folded a towel. I was doing everything I could to delay the moment of truth. Finally, I couldn't wait anymore. I turned the stick over. Positive, and not just a faint line, a dark, bold, undeniable line. I fell onto the bathroom floor. I didn't feel joy. I felt terror, pure unadulterated terror. How? We hadn't been trying. We hadn't been taking the medicines. How was this possible? And more importantly, how long until this one dies too? I heard the front door open. Mark was home. Sneha, I'm back, he called out. I scrambled up, shoved the test into my pocket and opened the door. He was standing there, sweaty, breathing hard from his run, looking healthy and handsome. Hey, he said, smiling, you okay? You look pale. I looked at him and I burst into tears. Oh, whoa, hey, what happened? He rushed over, grabbing my shoulders. Did something happen at work? I couldn't speak. I just pulled the plastic stick out of my pocket and held it up between us. Mark froze. He stared at it. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. The silence stretched out for 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Then he looked up at me. His eyes weren't filled with happiness. They were filled with the same fear I felt. Is this real? He whispered. I think so. I sobbed. He didn't hug me. He took a step back, running a hand through his hair. Okay, we need to call the doctor now, tonight. We didn't celebrate. We went into war mode. This time we weren't naive dreamers, we were veterans. We knew the enemy was biology and we knew the odds were stacked against us. We went to the doctor the next day, a new doctor, Dr. Evans. She was tough, no nonsense. She looked at my history, the 3 losses, the years of infertility. Listen to me, she said, looking me dead in the eye. This is a high-risk pregnancy, extremely high risk. Your body has rejected 3 pregnancies. If we want this baby to survive, your life as you know it stops today. What do you mean? I asked. I mean strict bed rest, she said. I mean you don't lift a finger, you don't cook, you don't clean, you don't work, you stay horizontal. We are going to pump you full of progesterone to keep that cervix closed. We are going to monitor you every single week. It is going to be boring, it is going to be hard, and it is going to be scary. But if you want a baby, this is the price. I looked at Mark and he squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. We'll do it, Mark said. Whatever it takes. I'll do everything else. She won't move. And that's how the longest 9 months of my life began. I quit my job. I lay in bed. Mark became my nurse, my chef, my cleaner, my everything. He worked all day, then came home and took care of me. He injected the hormones into my hip because I couldn't reach. He brought me meals on a tray. He washed my hair in the sink because I wasn't allowed to stand in the shower for too long. Every week we went to the clinic. Every week we held our breath as the ultrasound wand touched my belly, and every week we heard that miraculous whoosh, whoosh, whoosh of a tiny heart beating. It was agony. It was psychological torture. Every twinge I thought it was over. Every backache I thought labour was starting too soon. But weeks turned into months. The bump grew. I felt kicks, strong, angry kicks. She's a fighter, Mark would whisper, kissing my belly. She's stubborn, like her mum. We didn't buy a crib, we didn't buy clothes, we were too scared to jinx it. We had an empty room waiting, just like before. Finally, the date was set. A scheduled C-section at 38 weeks to avoid the stress of labour. The night before the surgery, I couldn't sleep, and I lay there in the hospital bed, listening to Mark snore softly on the uncomfortable pull-out chair next to me. I put my hand on my stomach. Please, I whispered to the universe, to God, to anyone listening, please let us keep this one. Just give us this one miracle and I will never ask for anything else again. I had no idea that the universe was about to grant my wish in the most spectacular way possible, only to exact a price so heavy that it would nearly destroy me. The sun came up, the nurses came in. It was time. The operating room was freezing. That's the first thing I remember, not the fear. Not the excitement, but the bone-chilling cold. I was shaking, my teeth chattering so hard I thought I might crack a molar. But it wasn't just the temperature, it was the terror. I was lying on the table, my arms strapped out to the sides like I was being crucified. A blue curtain raised just below my chin. I couldn't feel my legs. The spinal block had done its job, but I could feel the pressure, the tugging. It felt like someone was rummaging through a handbag, except the handbag was my body. Mark was right there by my head. He was wearing those ridiculous blue paper scrubs and a bouffant cap that looked way too small for his head. His eyes were the only thing I could see above his mask, and they were wide, locked onto mine. He was stroking my hair, whispering a constant stream of reassurance. You're doing great, babe. Just breathe. Look at me. Don't look at the lights. Just look at me. But I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was crushed under a boulder. In my mind, I was replaying the last 3 times. The silence, the I'm sorry, the the grief. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was waiting for the doctor to stop moving, to sigh, to tell us it was over. Almost there. The doctor's voice cut through the sterile air. I see the head. One more push of pressure. I squeezed Mark's hand so hard I felt his knuckles pop and I held my breath. The room went silent. The beeping of the monitor seemed to slow down. And then a sound. It wasn't a whimper. It wasn't a soft gurgle. It was a roar, a loud, angry, beautiful, life-affirming scream that shattered the atmosphere in that room. Wow! Time stopped. Literally stopped. I gasped, air rushing into my lungs for the first time in 9 months. I looked at Mark. He had frozen. He slowly turned his head toward the sound, and I saw the exact moment his heart broke open. Tears, instant heavy tears, spilled out of his eyes and soaked into his paper mask. She's here, he choked out, his voice thick with emotion. Sneha! She's crying. She's loud. Is she okay? I sobbed, trying to lift my head, straining against the straps. Mark, is she okay? She's perfect, the doctor announced, lifting her up over the curtain for a split second. I saw a flash of purple, slick skin, a scrunched up face and a full head of dark hair. My daughter, my survivor. They took her to the warmer to clean her up and Mark went with them. I lay there getting stitched up, just listening to that cry. It was the best music I had ever heard. Every scream told me, I am here, I am alive, I made it. A few minutes later, Mark came back. He was holding a small bundle wrapped tightly in a hospital blanket with pink and blue stripes. He walked over to me and the look on his face, I wish I could bottle that look. It was a mixture of awe, exhaustion, and a love so fierce it was almost frightening. Meet Mia, he whispered, lowering her down to my chest. I looked at her. Her eyes were swollen shut, her skin was peeling a little, and she had a tiny scratch on her nose. She was absolutely, undeniably the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I pressed my cheek against her warm, fuzzy head and inhaled the scent of vernix and new life. We won, Mark. I wept. We finally won. The next 4 days in the hospital were a blur of bliss and I was recovering from major surgery, in pain, unable to walk without help, but I didn't care. I was on a high that no drug could replicate. And Mark transformed. I had always known he would be a good father, but I wasn't prepared for this. He became a super dad overnight. He didn't just help, he took over. He learned how to swaddle her like a burrito within 2 tries. He changed the meconium diapers, that sticky black tar that terrifies most new parents, without flinching. He would sit in the uncomfortable hospital chair for hours, just holding her against his chest, watching her sleep. One night around 3 a.m, I woke up to the sound of soft humming. I looked over. The room was dim, lit only by the monitors. Mark was standing by the window, rocking Mia, humming an off-key version of The Beatles. Hey, I whispered, you okay? He turned startled and smiled. She was fussing a little, didn't want to wake you. Go back to sleep. You need to sleep too, Mark, I said. You haven't slept in 2 days. He looked down and at the baby in his arms. I can't, he said softly. I'm afraid if I close my eyes, I'll wake up and this will all be a dream. I just want to look at her. That sentence, it hit me hard. We were both suffering from a PTSD of sorts. We were so used to loss that possession felt like a trick. But eventually they discharged us. We buckled Mia into her car seat. Mark checked the straps about 50 times, shaking the seat to make sure it wouldn't budge an inch. And we drove home. Walking into our apartment with the baby was surreal. For years, this place had been a fortress of sorrow. Now it was a home. The crib was no longer a museum piece. It had a baby in it. The changing table was covered in wipes and cream. The silence was replaced by the sounds of a breast pump and newborn grunts. Life fell into a rhythm, a tired, messy, glorious rhythm. Mark had taken 2 weeks of paternity leave, and those 2 weeks were the golden age of our marriage. We were a team. We operated like a well-oiled machine. I would breastfeed, he would burp, I would nap, he would do tummy time. He was obsessed with her. He would lay her on his chest on the couch and they would both fall asleep, her tiny bottom in the air, his large hand covering her entire back. I took so many pictures, hundreds of them. Mark kissing her feet, Mark making silly faces to try and get a reaction, Mark explaining the stock market to her while he changed her diaper. You see, Mia, he'd say in a serious voice, diversification is key, just like your diaper usage. I would stand in the doorway, drinking my cold coffee and feel my heart swell until I thought it might burst. The darkness of the last 4 years, the miscarriages, the needles, the tears, it all felt like a bad dream that was fading in the morning light. God or the universe or fate had finally balanced the scales. We had paid our dues in pain and now we were being rewarded with joy. When Mark went back to work, I was nervous about being alone, but he called me every hour on the hour. How is she? Did she eat? Send me a picture. He would rush home at 5:30 p.m. sharp. I'd hear his key in the lock and Mia would kick her legs as if she knew. He wouldn't even change his clothes. He'd drop his bag, wash his hands and come straight to us. Give me my girls, he'd say, scooping us both into a hug. One evening, when Mia was about 3 weeks old, we were sitting on the balcony. It was a warm summer evening. The city lights were twinkling below us. Mia was asleep in Mark's arms. He looked at me, his eyes shining. You know, Sneha, I didn't think we'd make it here. There were nights I thought we were done, us, the marriage, everything. I nodded, reaching out to touch his hand. I know, I thought so too. But looking at her, he tilted his head toward the sleeping baby. It makes everything make sense. All the pain. I'd go through it all again just to get to this moment. She's our light. She is. I agreed. We're the lucky ones, Mark. Yeah, he smiled, a relaxed, content smile that reached his eyes. We are the lucky ones, finally. That word echoes in my head now, lucky. We celebrated her 1-month birthday with a little cupcake, just us 3. We put a 1-month-old sticker on her onesie and took photos. Mark held her up like Simba in The Lion King. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. Day 32 passed, day 33 passed, then came day 34. It was a Saturday, the sun was streaming through the windows, it was supposed to be a lazy day. We had planned to take Mia for her first walk in the park in the stroller. Mark was in a great mood, he made pancakes, blueberry pancakes, my favourite. The kitchen smelled of batter and coffee. He was dancing around the kitchen island, singing along to the radio, flipping a pancake in the air. Who's the best dad in the world? He asked Mia, who was swinging in her bouncer on the counter. I am! Yes, I am! I was sitting at the table, scrolling through my phone, feeling a sense of peace so profound it felt solid. I looked at my husband, tall, strong, healthy. He had just had a physical for his life insurance policy 2 months ago, clean bill of health. His heart was strong. His blood pressure was perfect. He was 34 years old in the prime of his life. Babe, Mark said, turning to me with a plate of pancakes. After breakfast, I'm going to run down to the pharmacy to get more diapers and your vitamins. Then we do the park. Sounds like a plan, I smiled, taking a bite. These are good. Secret ingredient is love. He winked. And extra butter. He leaned over and kissed me on the forehead. His lips were warm. I love you, Sneha. You're an amazing mum. Oh, I love you too, I said. Oh, those were the last words I said to him while he was standing. He turned back to the sink to rinse a pan and I heard the water running. Then I heard a gasp, not a loud one, just a sharp intake of breath like he had remembered something he forgot. Then the crash. The pan hit the floor with a deafening clang. I looked up, expecting to see him bending down to pick it up, expecting him to laugh and say, Butterfingers. But he wasn't bending down, he was swaying. His hand was clutching his chest, grabbing at his shirt like he was trying to rip it off. His face, oh God, his face. It had drained of all colour in a split second. His eyes were wide, filled with a confusion and panic that I will see in my nightmares until the day I die. Mark? I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. He tried to say something, his mouth moved, but no sound came out. He reached a hand out toward me, his fingers trembling, and then he collapsed. He didn't slump. He fell like a tree that had been cut down, straight back, hitting the hardwood floor with a sickening thud that shook the apartment. Mark! I screamed his name, scrambling over the chair, sliding on the floor to get to him. Mia started crying and her bouncer, startled by the noise. The contrast, the baby's cry of life and the sudden terrifying silence of my husband lying on the kitchen floor was jarring. I grabbed his face. Oh, Mark, wake up, look at me! His eyes were open, but they were staring at the ceiling, unseeing. He gasped once, a horrible, rattling sound, and then nothing. No movement, no breath. My world, which had been rebuilt brick by brick over the last 34 days, didn't just crack, it exploded. I fumbled for my phone with shaking hands, dialing 911, screaming at the operator while I started pushing on his chest, counting the compressions just like I'd learned in the infant CPR class we took for Mia. 1, 2, 3, 4. Come on, Mark, don't you dare leave us. But as I pumped his chest, feeling the ribs under my hands, I looked at his face. The light was gone. gone. The man who had been dancing 5 minutes ago, the father who was singing to his daughter, he wasn't there anymore. The sirens were coming. I could hear them in the distance, but deep down in the cold pit of my stomach, I knew. The 34 days of heaven were over. Hell had just opened its doors. I don't know how long I was on the floor. It could have been 5 seconds. It could have been 5 years. Time doesn't move in a straight line when your world is ending. It fractures. 1, 2, 3, 4. Stay with me, Mark. Stay with me. My hands were locked together, pressing down on his chest. I could feel the resistance of his ribs, the horrifying solidity of his body that suddenly felt like it didn't belong to him anymore. He was warm. He was right there. But he wasn't there. 911, what is your emergency? The voice on the speakerphone was calm. Too calm. It made me angry. My husband, he collapsed. He's not breathing. I'm doing CPR. He's 34. He's 34. I was screaming the age like it was a password that would force the universe to reboot. Young people don't die. New fathers don't die. Mia was screaming in her bouncer. A high-pitched, terrified wail that pierced through the chaos. I wanted to go to her. I wanted to pick her up and tell her it was okay, but I couldn't stop. If I took my hands off his chest, the blood stopped moving to his brain. I was the only thing keeping him alive. I was his heart now. The paramedics are on their way, Mum. Keep doing compressions. Push hard and fast. I am, I sobbed, sweat dripping from my forehead onto Mark's stillness. Come back, Mark, you don't get to do this. We just started, we just got her. I looked at his face. His lips were turning a shade of blue that I'd never seen on a human being before. His eyes were still half open, staring at the ceiling fan. I wanted to close them, but I couldn't stop pumping. Then the door burst open. I hadn't unlocked it, but the firefighters didn't care. They broke the jam with a loud crack. Suddenly, the small kitchen was filled with giant men in heavy boots and turnout gear. The noise was overwhelming. Radio squawking, heavy equipment thumping on the floor, voices barking orders. Mum, step back, let us work. And no, I can't. Step back. A large hand grabbed my shoulder and pulled me away. I stumbled back, hitting the refrigerator. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't make fists. I watched them descend on him like a swarm. One guy was cutting open his favourite t-shirt, the one he wore for lucky game days. Another was shoving a plastic tube down his throat. No pulse, one of them shouted. Charging defibrillator. Clear. Thump. Mark's body jerked violently off the floor. I covered my mouth to stifle a scream. Mia was still crying. I scrambled over to the bouncer, unbuckled her with trembling fingers and clutched her to my chest. I buried her face in my neck so she wouldn't see her father dying on the kitchen floor. Again, clear. Thump. We have a rhythm. No, still V-fib. Let's load and go. We need to move. They lifted him onto a stretcher. He looked so big, so heavy. His arm flopped off the side, dangling lifelessly until one of the medics tucked it back in. Can I come? I choked out. I have to come. There's no room in the back, ma'am. You have to follow us. Does he have any medical history? No, he's healthy. He just had a physical, I was babbling. Meet us at St. Jude S. Go now. They were gone. The siren wailed outside, fading into the distance. I was standing in the middle of my kitchen. The pancakes were still on the stove, burning now. Smoke was filling the room. The smell of burnt batter mixed with the lingering scent of ozone from the defibrillator. I turned off the stove. I don't know why. It was such a mundane, stupid thing to do. I grabbed my purse. I grabbed the diaper bag. I looked down at Mia. She had stopped crying and was looking up at me with those big, dark eyes, Mark's eyes. Daddy's okay. I lied to her. Daddy's just sick. I drove to the hospital like a maniac. I don't remember the traffic lights. I don't remember the route. I just remember the steering wheel feeling slippery under my hand. The emergency room waiting area was a purgatory of fluorescent lights and coughing people. I ran to the desk carrying Mia in her cast. Mark Reynolds, the ambulance just brought him in. The receptionist didn't look up immediately. She was typing. Look at me. I slammed my hand on the desk. My husband is dying. Where is he? She looked up startled. Name? Reynolds, Mark. Trauma room 1. The doctor will come out to you. You can't go in there right now. I need to be with him. Mum, they are working on him. If you go in there, you're in the way. Sit down. How do you sit down when your soul is being ripped out of your body? I sat in a hard plastic chair into the corner. I took Mia out of the car seat and held her. She was so warm, so alive. I stared at the double doors marked authorised personnel only. Every time they swung open, my heart hammered against my ribs. I started bargaining with God. Take the house, take my job, take everything, just give him back. I don't need a perfect life. I just need him. Let him be paralysed. Let him be brain damaged. I don't care. Just let him stay. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. A nurse came out. She looked around the room holding a clipboard. Her face was blank, professional. Family of Mark Reynolds? I shot up. Hey, yes, that's me. I'm his wife. She didn't smile. She didn't say, he's stabilising. She said, come with me, please. She led me into a small private room off the hallway, the bad news room. I knew what this room was. I'd seen it in movies. It had soft lighting, a box of tissues on the table and 2 comfortable chairs. It was a room designed to soften a blow that could not be softened. No, I whispered, backing away. I don't want to go in there. Just take me to him. Mrs. Reynolds, please. The doctor is coming. I walked in. My legs felt like they were made of lead. I sat down, clutching Mia so tight she squirmed. A minute later, a tall man in a white coat walked in. He looked tired. He took off his glasses. Mrs. Reynolds, is he okay? I asked. My voice was small, a child's voice. He sat down opposite me. He leaned forward. We did everything we could, he began. The world stopped spinning. The air left the room. We worked on him for 45 minutes. He had a massive cardiac event, a blockage in the main artery. They call it the Widowmaker. It was instant. He didn't suffer. No, I shook my head. No, you're wrong. He's 34. He made pancakes this morning. He was dancing. I am so sorry. There was nothing anyone could have done. Even if he had been in the hospital when it happened, the outcome likely would have been the same. Stop saying that, I shouted. He's not dead. He can't be dead. We just had a baby. Look. I held Mia up towards him as if her existence proved that Mark couldn't be gone. He's a father. He can't leave her. The doctor just looked at me with sad, pitying eyes. I am so sorry for your loss. Would you like to see him? Would I like to see him? I nodded. I couldn't speak. They led me down the hallway, past the bustling nurses, past the beeping machines. They took me to a curtained-off area. Take your time, the nurse whispered, and she closed the curtain behind me. There he was. He was lying on a gurney, covered in a white sheet up to his chest. He looked normal. He looked like he was taking a nap. His hair was a little messy from the morning. His stubble was there. Mark? I whispered. I walked over and touched his hand. It was cold. That was the moment it became real. That terrible, unnatural coldness. The heat that I had felt this morning, the warmth of the man I had slept next to for 6 years, was gone. I put my hand on his chest. It was still. No rise and fall. No heartbeat. I placed Mia on his chest. Say goodbye to Daddy, Mia. I choked out, tears finally blinding me, streaming down my face like a river. Tell him you love him. Mia didn't cry. She just lay there on her father's silent chest, looking around at the light. I collapsed. I fell onto his body, burying my face in his neck, smelling the faint scent of his aftershave mixed with the hospital bleach. I screamed. I didn't care who heard me. I screamed until my throat tasted like blood. I screamed for the injustice of it. I screamed for the 4 years of fighting to get here, only to have the prize snatched away. You promised. I hit his chest weakly. You promised we would do this together. You liar. You promised. But he didn't answer. He would never answer again. I don't know how I left the hospital. I think they gave me a sedative, but I didn't take it because I was breastfeeding. A social worker gave me a plastic bag. These are his personal effects, she said gently. I looked inside. His wallet, his keys, his wedding ring, his wedding ring. I took it out and slid it onto my thumb. It was too big. It felt heavy. Walking out of those automatic doors into the afternoon sun felt like an insult. The sun was shining. People were walking their dogs. Someone was laughing on a cell phone. How dare you? I wanted to scream at them. Don't you know the world just ended? Stop laughing. Stop living. The drive home was a blur. I kept looking at the passenger seat, expecting him to be there, expecting him to say, watch out for that car, babe. But the seat was empty, just the plastic bag with his ring rattling inside. I pulled into our driveway. I looked up at our apartment window. The light was still on in the kitchen. I had to walk up the stairs. I had to unlock the door. When I opened the door, the smell hit me. The smell of pancake. It was exactly as we had left it 3 hours ago. The half-eaten plate on the table, his coffee mug with the lipstick stain from where I'd taken a sip sitting on the counter. The radio was still playing some upbeat pop song about summer love. I walked over and turned off the radio. The silence that followed was heavy suffocating. I put Mia in her crib. She was asleep. She didn't know that she was now a half orphan. She didn't know that the strong arms that held her yesterday would never hold her again. I walked back into the living room and sat on the floor right where he had fallen. I could still see the scuff mark from his shoe. I pulled my knees to my chest and wrapped my arms around myself, and I was shivering, freezing cold, even though it was July. I looked around the room, the diaper bag, the toys, the unmailed birth announcements on the table. Mark, I whispered the empty air. Nothing. I was alone. I wasn't just a mother. I wasn't just a wife. I was a 30-year-old widow with a 34-day-old baby, sitting on the floor of a rented apartment in a city that didn't care if we lived or died. The shock was starting to wear off and the panic was setting in. What do I do? How do I pay the rent? How do I raise her? I can't do this. I literally can't do this. I looked at the window. The sun was setting, casting long, dark shadows across the room. The light was fading. And for the first time in my life, I was afraid of the dark, because this time I knew no one was coming to turn the lights back on. The lasagna stopped coming after week 2. That's something they don't tell you in the grief pamphlets. People are amazing in the first few days. They swarm you with flowers that smell too sweet. They fill your fridge with casseroles and they hug you until your ribs ache. They say things like, "Call me if you need anything," and "We're here for you." But then their lives go on. They have jobs, dentist appointments, soccer practices. The text messages slow down and the phone stops ringing. The flowers wilt and turn into brown, crunchy reminders of death that you have to throw away yourself. And then it's just you. You, a 3-bedroom apartment that feels like a mausoleum, and a 6-week-old baby who doesn't know that her world is shattered. We entered what I call the grey zone. Day and night ceased to exist. My life became a cycle of 2-hour increments. Feed Mia, burp Mia, change Mia, rock Mia, attempt to sleep for 40 minutes, wake up to her crying, repeat. I was operating on a level of exhaustion that I didn't think was biologically possible. It wasn't just tired, it was a physical weight, like I was moving through waist-deep water while wearing a lead vest. My eyes burned constantly, my body, still recovering from the C-section, ached in places I didn't know existed. The scar on my stomach was a constant reminder of how she entered the world, and the emptiness in my bed was a constant reminder of who had left it. I became a robot. I stopped looking in the mirror because I didn't recognise the woman staring back. She had dark circles under her eyes that looked like bruises. Her hair was in a messy bun that hadn't been washed in 4 days. She wore Mark's oversized t-shirts because they still smelled faintly like him, Old Spice and fabric softener, and wearing them felt like the closest thing to a hug I was ever going to get again. The nights were the hardest. During the day, there was noise, traffic outside, the hum of the refrigerator, the TV playing low in the background just to break the silence. But at 3 a.m, the world is dead silent. I would sit in the rocking chair in the nursery, feeding Mia. The only light was the soft glow of the night light. I would look down at her tiny face, illuminated in the shadows, and I would talk to him. "She has your chin mark," I'd whisper to the empty room. "She smiled today. I think it was gas, but it looked like a smile. You would have loved it." I waited for an answer. I waited for a creak in the floorboards, a gust of wind, a sign, anything to tell me he was listening. But there was only silence. The heavy, oppressive silence of a house missing its foundation. And then the fear would set in. It would start in my chest, a cold flutter, and spread to my fingertips. I would look at this tiny, fragile human being in my arms, this baby who relied on me for literally everything, and I would be paralysed by the realisation I am alone. If I choke on an apple, who calls 911? If I fall in the shower and hit my head, how long until someone finds us? Would she starve in her crib while I lay there? These thoughts weren't just passing worries, they were vivid, technicolor nightmares that played on a loop in my sleep-deprived brain. I started checking the locks on the door 3 times a night. I checked the stove. I checked Mia's breathing so often I practically poked her awake. I was hyper-vigilant, a soldier guarding a fortress with no backup. But grief wasn't the only monster I was fighting. There was a more practical, banal monster scratching at the door. Reality. Mark had handled the finances. That was his thing. He loved spreadsheets. He had a spreadsheet for everything: groceries, hobbies, savings, retirement. About 3 weeks after the funeral, I worked up the courage to open the mail that had been piling up on the kitchen counter. It was a mountain of white envelope. I sat at the table with a letter opener, my hands shaking. Bill, sympathy card. Bill, final notice. I opened the bank statement. I stared at the numbers and my stomach dropped. The funeral had cost thousands. The hospital bills for the C-section and Mia's care were starting to roll in, and even with insurance, the deductibles were astronomical. And then the rent. We lived in a nice apartment in the city. We could afford it with 2 incomes. We could manage it with some budgeting on 1 income if we were careful. But with my income, which was currently 0 because I was on unpaid maternity leave, it was impossible. I looked at the number on the checkbook. Then I looked at the rent bill. Panic is a cold shower. It wakes you up fast. I grabbed a calculator. I started doing the math, scribbling numbers on the back of an envelope. Diapers cost how much? Formula? My supply was dropping because of the stress, and I knew I'd have to switch soon. Utilities, internet, phone. The numbers didn't add up. They were in the red, deep red. Mark, what did you do? I whispered angrily, tears stinging my eyes. You left me with a baby and a mountain of debt. How am I supposed to do this? I felt a surge of resentment. It's a taboo thing to admit being angry at the dead, but I was furious. I was furious that he died. I was furious that he didn't have more life insurance. I was furious that he left me to figure out this mess while he got to rest. I spent the next 3 days making phone calls. Have you ever tried to navigate the American bureaucratic system while holding a crying infant? It is a special kind of hell. Press 1 for English. Press 2 for claims. I sat on hold for 45 minutes with the life insurance company, listening to terrible elevator jazz bouncing Mia on my knee. I'm sorry, ma'am, the representative said, her voice robotic. The policy was still in the probationary period. We need a toxicology report and the official death certificate before we can release any funds. It could take up to 90 days. 90 days? I shrieked. I have rent due in 10 days. My husband died of a heart attack. He wasn't on drugs. Why do you need a toxicology report? It's standard procedure, ma'am. I hung up and threw the phone across the couch. It bounced off a cushion and hit the floor. Mia startled and started screaming. I picked her up, shushing her aggressively. It's okay. Mummy's just losing her mind, that's all. She wouldn't stop crying. She was hungry or wet or just sensing the radioactive levels of stress emanating from my body. I walked the floor back and forth. My incision throbbed. My back ached. Please stop, I begged her. Mia, please, I can't take the noise. Just stop. She screamed louder, her face turning beet red. And in that moment, I almost broke. I had a flash. A terrifying, intrusive thought of just putting her in the crib, walking out the front door and never coming back, just driving until the gas ran out or disappearing. The thought lasted for a split second, but it terrified me to my core. I collapsed onto the floor, clutching her to my chest and sobbed. I'm sorry, I wailed into her onesie. I'm so sorry. I'm trying. Mommy is trying so hard. That afternoon, I forced myself to go to the grocery store. We were out of milk, eggs and bread, basic survival items. I put Mia in the carrier strapped to my chest. I walked to the store because I didn't want to waste gas. The grocery store was an assault on the senses. The lights were too bright, the music was too loud, and the people, they were so happy. I saw a couple in the produce aisle. They looked about our age. The guy was juggling 3 apples, making the woman laugh. She hit his arm playfully. They were discussing what to make for dinner. I stood there gripping the handle of my cart until my knuckles turned white. A wave of jealousy so potent it felt like nausea washed over me. You have no idea, I thought. You have no idea that he could drop dead right now. You think you have forever. You're idiots. I wanted to scream at them. I wanted to shake them and say, go home, hold each other, stop fighting about apples. I hurried through the aisles, grabbing random things. Cereal, frozen pizza, whatever was easy. At the checkout, the cashier, a teenage girl snapping gum, looked at Mia. Oh, she's so cute, she said. How old? 6 weeks, I muttered, staring at the credit card terminal, praying approved would pop up. Is Dad babysitting tonight so you can shop? She asked innocently. The air left my lungs. Is Dad babysitting? I looked at her. She was just a kid. She didn't know. She was just making conversation. And no, I said, my voice sounding like gravel. Dad's busy. I grabbed my bags and practically ran out of the store. I walked home in the rain, not bothering to open an umbrella, protecting Mia's head with my jacket while I got soaked. That night, after I finally got Mia down to sleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I had to face the neck hurdle, returning to work. My maternity leave was unpaid. FMLA, Family and Medical Leave Act, protected my job, but it didn't pay my bills. I had 2 weeks left before I had to go back. I opened a tab for local daycare centres. I clicked on the first one. Bright beginnings. The website had happy pictures of kids painting and playing in sandboxes. I clicked on tuition and rate. My jaw dropped. $2,400 a month for infant care? $2,400. That was more than my rent. That was almost my entire paycheck. I checked another one, $2,200. Another one, $2,600. I did the math. If I went back to work after paying for daycare, transportation and taxes, I would be bringing home maybe $200 a month. $200 to hand my 6-week-old baby over to strangers, to miss her first smile, to miss her rolling over, to let someone else comfort her when she cried. But if I didn't go back to work, we would be homeless in 2 months. I stared at the screen, the blue light illuminating the tears running down my face. I felt trapped. It was a cage with no exit. I can't leave her. My heart screamed. She's all I have left of him. If something happens to her while I'm at work, I will die. But you have to eat, my brain argued. You have to keep the lights on. I closed the laptop and put my head in my hands. God, why? I whispered. Why are you doing this? Haven't you taken enough? You took my first baby. You took my second. You took my third. You took my husband. Now you want to take my dignity. You want to take my ability to be a mother. I felt a dark, cold resolve settling in. I wasn't sad anymore. I was cornered, and a cornered animal fights. I looked at the phone. There were missed calls. Mark's sister, Sarah. My cousin, Linda. They had been calling a lot lately, not to ask how I was, but to suggest things. Sneha, we're worried about you. Sneha, you sound unstable. Sneha, maybe you need a break. I knew what was coming. I could feel the walls closing in, not just from the debt, but from the people who claimed to love me. They didn't think I could do it. They looked at me and saw a broken widow, a tragedy waiting to happen. They looked at Mia and saw a baby who needed better than what I could give. I picked up the phone and looked at the picture of Mark on the lock screen. He was smiling, giving a thumbs up. I won't let them take her, Mark, I said, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. I don't care if we have to live in a cardboard box. I don't care if I never sleep again. She stays with me. But as I said it, the phone rang again. It was Sarah. I stared at the buzzing screen. It felt like a warning siren. The battle for survival wasn't just about money anymore. It was about custody. It was about the right to be a mother to my own child. I took a deep breath, wiped the tears from my cheeks and pressed accept. Hello, Sarah, I said. Sneha, we need to talk, she said. Her voice wasn't warm. It was business. We've been discussing the situation about Mia. My blood ran cold. The real fight had just begun. Sneha, we need to talk. We've been discussing the situation about Mia. Those words hung in the air like toxic smoke. I stood in the middle of my living room, phone pressed to my ear, looking at the pile of unpaid bills on the table and the laundry basket overflowing with tiny pink onesies. My heart started hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. What situation? I asked, forcing my voice to stay level, though my hand was trembling. There is no situation, Sarah. Mia is fine. I am fine. You're not fine, honey, Sarah said. Her voice was dripping with that sickly sweet pity that is far more dangerous than open aggression. It's the kind of tone people use when they're about to hurt you for your own good. We're coming over, Linda and I. We're 10 minutes away. No, Click. She hung up. I stared at the phone. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded my system. I looked around the apartment. It was a disaster zone. There were empty takeout boxes on the counter. The sink was full of dishes. I hadn't showered in 2 days. I was wearing leggings with a hole in the knee and a t-shirt stained with breast. To anyone else, this looked like the home of a grieving, exhausted new mother. But to them, to Mark's perfect suburban sister with her 2 nannies and her immaculate life, this would look like negligence. This would look like failure. I had 10 minutes. I moved like a whirlwind. I threw the takeout boxes in the trash and shoved the trash bag into the closet. I kicked the laundry under the sofa. I ran a wet rag over the coffee table. I sprayed air freshener to mask the scent of stale milk and sadness. I ran to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face and tried to smooth down my frizzy hair. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. I looked like a ghost. I pinched my cheeks, trying to bring some colour back, but I just looked like a bruised ghost. Ding dong. They were here. I opened the door and there they stood, the tribunal. Sarah, Mark's older sister, looked like she had just stepped out of a catalogue. Immaculate beige coat, perfect blowout designer bag. Next to her was my cousin Linda, who always followed whoever had the most money or authority. Oh, Sneha, Sarah sighed, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. She scanned the room instantly. Her eyes didn't miss a thing. She saw the dust on the TV stand. She saw the dark circles under my eyes. She saw the stack of final notice envelopes I hadn't managed to hide. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Linda, I said, wrapping my arms around myself. To what do I owe the pleasure? We brought you some coffee, Linda said, handing me a cardboard cup from Starbucks. It felt like a peace offering before a declaration of war. They sat on the sofa. I sat on the armchair facing them. It felt like an interrogation. Where's the baby? Sarah asked. She's sleeping, I said quickly. Please keep your voices down. And it took me an hour to get her down. Of course, Sarah whispered. She leaned forward, clasping her manicured hands together. Sneha, look, we love you. You know that, right? Mark loved you so much. Mentioning his name was a cheap shot. It made my eyes sting. I know. But we are worried, she continued, her voice dropping to a serious, hushed tone. We've been talking to the family, to Mum and Dad. Everyone is concerned. Concerned about what? I asked, my defences going up. About your mental state, Linda chimed in, looking at her shoes. And your financial situation, Sneha. We know you're drowning. We know the life insurance is held up. We know you have to go back to work. I have a plan, I lied. I'm figuring it out. You're not, Sarah cut in, her voice hardening. You look like you haven't slept in weeks. You're barely eating. You're isolating yourself. And this apartment, Sneha, this isn't an environment for a newborn. It's chaotic. It's depressing. I just lost my husband, I snapped, forgetting to whisper. It's been 40 days. Am I supposed to be throwing parties? Am I supposed to have a spotless house? I am grieving. Exactly, Sarah said, as if I had just proved her point. You are grieving. You are in no state to take care of an infant alone. You are unstable. The word hit me like a slap. Unstable. So here is what we think is best, Sarah said, opening her expensive bag and pulling out a folder. She didn't hand it to me, she just held it. I have a big house in California. We have the guest wing. We have the nannies. Mum and Dad are there nearby. I stopped breathing. I knew what was coming. We want to take Mia, she said. She said it so casually, like she was asking to borrow a sweater. What? I whispered. Just for a while, Linda added quickly, seeing the look on my face. 6 months, maybe a year, just until you get back on your feet, until you process your grief. You can stay here, go back to work, save money, maybe get some therapy. We'll take care of Mia. She'll have everything she needs. The best doctors, fresh air, cousins to play with. You want to take my daughter to California? I stood up, my legs shaking. You want to take her 3,000 miles away from me? It's for her own good, Sneha. Sarah stood up too. Look at you. You're a mess. How are you going to pay for daycare? How are you going to feed her? Do you want her to grow up in poverty? Do you want her to absorb all this sadness? She is my daughter, I hissed. She needs her mother. She doesn't need a guest wing and a nanny. She needs me. She needs a stable parent, Sarah's voice raised. And right now, you are not that. Mark would not want this. He wouldn't want his daughter living like this. Don't you dare. I pointed a trembling finger at her. Don't you dare speak for him. You didn't know us. You came to visit once a year. You don't know what he would want. I know he wouldn't want his wife to have a breakdown while holding his baby. Sarah shot back cold as ice. We are trying to help you, Sneha. Don't make this ugly. If you can't provide for her, the state might get involved. And trust me, you don't want that. I'm offering you a family solution. Don't force us to take other measures. The threat hung in the air. Other measures. Custody battle, lawyers, child protective services. They were rich. I was broke. In America, money doesn't just talk, it screams. If they wanted to paint me as an unfit, depressed, unstable widow, they could probably do it. Get out, I said. My voice was low. Sneha, get out. I walked to the door and yanked it open. Get out of my house, both of you. Sarah looked at me with a mix of pity and disdain. She put the folder back in her bag. Think about it, she said, pausing at the doorway. Don't be selfish. Do what's right for Mia, not for you. They left. The door clicked shut. I locked it. Then I engaged the deadbolt. Then I put the chain on. I slid down the door until I hit the floor. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was caving in. They wanted to take her. They really wanted to take her. I crawled into the nursery. Mia was awake. She was lying in her crib, looking at the mobile spinning above her head, little plush clouds and stars. She looked so innocent. She had no idea that downstairs her aunt was plotting to take her away to a mansion in California. I reached through the bars and touched her tiny hand. Her fingers curled around my finger instantly. The grip was strong. I won't let them, I whispered to her. I swear to you, Mia, I will fight them with everything I have. But the walls were closing in. Later that afternoon, as if the universe wanted to test my sanity further, my friend Jessica dropped by. Jessica was one of those friends who read too many self-help books and believed in manifesting happiness. She saw my red eyes and immediately went into fix-it mode. Oh, honey, she said, sitting on my couch, sipping the tea I made her. You need to get out of this headspace. It's so toxic. My husband died, Jessica, I said dryly. It's not a headspace, it's my life. I know, she waved her hand dismissively. But you're so young, Sneha. You're 30. You have your whole life ahead of you. Then she dropped the bomb that made me want to scream until my vocal cords snapped. You know, she said, leaning in conspiratorially, I was talking to Jason, from accounting. He's divorced. He has a kid too. He's really nice. I was thinking maybe in a few months you guys could grab a coffee. I stared at her. I actually stopped blinking. Are you trying to set me up? I asked, my voice flat. Not now, she said quickly, but eventually. Mia needs a father figure, right? You can't do this alone forever. And honestly, statistics show that women who repartner quickly tend to recover from grief faster. You need to move on, Sneha. Mark is gone. You're still here. Move on. That phrase. It's the cruelest phrase in the English language. They treat husbands like iPhones. Oh, yours broke. That's sad. Anyway, the new model is out. You should upgrade. You can't just not have a phone. Jessica, I said, standing up, I need you to leave. What? I was just trying to help. You're talking about replacing my husband, I said, my voice shaking with rage. He's been dead for 40 days. His side of the bed still smells like him. And you're talking about coffee with Jason from accounting. You're being irrational, she huffed, standing up. I'm just saying you need a man to help you raise that baby. You can't be a martyr. She left in a huff, leaving me alone again in the silence. I sat on the sofa as the sun went down. The shadows lengthened across the floor, reaching for me like long, dark fingers. I was surrounded. On one side, Mark's family, armed with money and lawyers, claiming I was too unstable to be a mother. They wanted to take my child to save her. On the other side, my friends and society telling me I was broken and incomplete without a man, telling me to move on and replace the love of my life because it was practical. And in the middle, there was me, broke, exhausted, terrified. I looked at the pile of bills again. I looked at the eviction notice that had come in the mail today. I hadn't told Sarah about that. If she knew we were being evicted, she would take Mia tomorrow. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. The lights were coming on in the skyscrapers. Thousands of people living their lives. None of them cared. I felt a sudden terrifying clarity. I couldn't stay here. If I stayed in this apartment, I would lose. I would lose the battle against the dead. I would lose my mind from the grief. And eventually Sarah would win. She would wear me down, or she would use the legal system to declare me unfit. I looked at Mia, who was now fussing in her swing. They thought I was weak. They thought I was a mess. They thought grief had made me soft. They were wrong. Grief burns everything else away, yes, but sometimes what's left in the ashes isn't weakness, it's diamond. It's something hard, sharp and unbreakable. I walked over to the closet and pulled out a suitcase. Not a diaper bag, a suitcase. I started packing. I packed Mia's clothes. I packed the formula. I packed my laptop. I packed the photo album of Mark. I packed his wedding ring, which I slipped onto a chain around my neck. What? I didn't know where we were going. I just knew we couldn't be here when Sarah came back. I couldn't be here when the landlord came to lock the doors. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I wasn't going to let them take my daughter. I picked up my phone and blocked Sarah's number, then Linda's, then Jessica's. I was cutting the cords. It was reckless, it was dangerous, it was exactly the kind of unstable behaviour they accused me of. But for the first time in 40 days, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a mother. I looked at Mia, strapped into her car seat by the door. "It's just us now, baby girl," I whispered. "You and me against the world." I grabbed the handle of the suitcase. I took one last look at the apartment where I had been so happy and so destroyed. I looked at the spot on the kitchen floor where Mark had died. "I'm sorry, Mark," I whispered. "I can't stay here with your ghost anymore. I have to save our daughter." I opened the door and stepped out into the night. The elevator ride down felt like a descent into the unknown. I had no job, no home, and $50 in my wallet. But as I walked out of the building and the cool night air hit my face, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't fear anymore. It was adrenaline. I hailed a taxi. "Where to?" the driver asked, looking at me and the baby in the rearview mirror. I hesitated. "Where do you go when you are running from your life?" Then I remembered something Mark had told me once, a place he always wanted to go, a place far away from the noise and the judgment. I looked the driver in the eye. "The train station," I said, "and hurry." The train ride was a blur of motion and shadow. I sat in the corner of a dimly lit car, Mia strapped to my chest in her carrier, my suitcase wedged between my knees. I watched the city that had given me everything and then taken it all away, fade into the distance. The skyscrapers turned into suburbs, the suburbs turned into strip malls, and eventually there was nothing but the black void of the countryside and the rhythmic clack, clack, clack track. I didn't have a plan. That's the terrifying truth. In movies, the heroine always has a destination. She has a secret aunt in a cabin or a stash of cash under the floorboards. I had $50, a maxed out credit card, and a heart that felt like it was held together by duct tape. We got off at a station 3 states away. It was a small coastal town in Oregon. Why there? Because Mark had a calendar in his office with a picture of a lighthouse on a rocky cliff. He used to stare at it during tax season and say, "One day, Sneha, one day we'll just go watch the waves and forget about Excel spreadsheets." So I brought him there, or at least I brought the memory of him. The first week was the hardest week of my life, harder than the C-section, harder than the funeral. We stayed in a motel called the Sea Breeze. It sounded romantic. It was not. It smelled of stale cigarettes and damp carpet. I paid for 3 nights with the last of my cash. I remember sitting on the edge of the lumpy mattress, washing Mia's bottles in the bathroom sink with hand soap because I couldn't afford dish detergent. I looked at myself in the cracked mirror. "What have you done?" I whispered to my reflection. "You've kidnapped your own child. You're homeless. You're insane." The fear was physical. It was a nausea that never went away. Every time a car door slammed outside, I flinched, thinking it was Sarah or the police or a social worker coming to take Mia away. I checked my phone constantly, even though I had changed the number. It was a phantom limb syndrome of my old life. But then I would look at Mia. She was oblivious. To her, this dingy motel room was a palace because I was there. She would look up at me while she drank her bottle, her hand resting on my chest, her eyes full of absolute unwavering trust. That trust was my fuel. It was the only thing keeping me upright. On the 4th day, the money ran out. I put Mia in the stroller, a cheap umbrella one I had bought at a thrift store because the big fancy travel system wouldn't fit in the suitcase, and we hit the pavement. I walked into every business on Main Street, the diner, at the hardware store, the tourist gift shop. There. "Are you hiring?" "I can do anything. Accounting, cleaning, inventory." But then they would look at the baby. "We don't have childcare, honey," the manager of the gift shop said, looking at Mia with a frown. "You can't work with a baby." "She sleeps most of the time," I pleaded. "I can wear her. You won't even know she's there." "Liability," she said. "Sorry." Door after door closed in my face. The rejection was crushing. In my old life, I was a respected professional. I had a degree. I had a portfolio. Here, I was just a desperate woman with a baby, a liability, a problem to be avoided. I ended up at a small bakery at the end of the street. O'Malley's Breads. It smelled like yeast and cinnamon. My stomach growled so loud I was embarrassed. I hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 days, so I could afford formula. An older woman with flour on her apron and grey hair pulled back in a messy bun was behind the counter. She was kneading dough like she was fighting it. "Can I help you?" she asked, not looking up. "I need a job," I said. No preamble, no resume. "I'm smart, I'm fast, and I'm desperate. I will scrub your floors. I will do your taxes. I will knead that dough. But I have a baby and I can't afford daycare, so she has to stay with me." The woman stopped kneading. She looked up. She had sharp blue eyes that had seen a lot of life. She looked at me, really looked at me, past the messy hair, past the worn-out sneakers, straight into my soul. Then she looked at Mia, who was gumming on her fist in the stroller. "Husband?" she asked. "Dead," I said. "Heart attack, 45 days ago." The woman wiped her hands on her apron. She walked around the counter. She pulled a stool out. "Sit," she ordered. Then she went to the display case, grabbed a giant blueberry muffin and a cup of coffee and put them in front of me. "Eat, you look like you're about to pass out." I ate. I think I inhaled it. I tried not to cry, but the simple, unexpected kindness of a stranger broke the dam. Tears dripped into my coffee. "I'm Betty," she said. "I can't pay you much. Minimum wage plus tips if you work the counter, and you can take home the day-old bread." "And the baby?" I asked, wiping my face. And Betty looked at Mia. "I raised 4 boys in the back of a kitchen. As long as she doesn't fall into the mixer, she stays." That day, I made a vow. Not to God, not to Mark, but to myself. I will never be helpless again. I will build a fortress around this child that no one can tear down. Life became a grind, but it was a simple grind. I woke up at 4 a.m. I strapped Mia to my back. I walked to the bakery. I learned how to bake sourdough. I learned how to frost cupcakes. I learned that physical exhaustion is better than mental exhaustion because when your body is tired, you can actually sleep. Betty became my saviour. She wasn't hugging and kissing us. She was tough. She yelled if I burned the cookies, but she also set up a pack and play in the office for Mia. She would hold Mia while I ran the lunch rush. She never asked about my past and she never judged my present. Months passed. The leaves turned orange, then the snow fell, then the flowers bloomed again. We moved out of the motel and into a tiny studio apartment above a garage. It was small. The radiator clanked and the window was drafty, but it was ours. I bought a rug from a garage sale. I framed a picture of Mark and put it on the nightstand. I started doing the bakery's books. I found tax deductions Betty didn't know existed. I reorganised her inventory. Business went up. She gave me a raise. Slowly, brick by brick, I was rebuilding. But the grief was always there. It wasn't a tsunami anymore. It was a tide. Some days it receded and I could laugh and sing to Mia. Other days the tide came in high and I would find myself weeping in the bathroom while the bread rose in the ovens. One night, Mia was sick. A high fever. She was about 10 months old. She was crying, thrashing, burning up. I was rocking her, terrified. "I want Mark." I sobbed out loud. "I can't do this alone. I'm not strong enough." I reached for my phone. My finger hovered over Sarah's block number. It would be so easy. Just one call. They would send a plane. They would take us to the best doctors. I could sleep. I could stop worrying about money. "Do it," a voice in my head whispered. "Give up. You're failing." I looked at the ring on the chain around my neck. I closed my eyes and tried to remember Mark's voice. "You're a fighter, Sneha. You're the strongest woman I know." I pulled my hand away from the phone. I went to the kitchen, got a cold washcloth and wiped Mia's forehead. I sang to her. I held her all night, pacing the floor of that tiny apartment until the sun came up and her fever broke. When she opened her eyes that morning and smiled at me, a weak, tired smile, I knew. I didn't need them. I didn't need the money, the mansion, the pity. I was enough. 2 years later. The ocean breeze is cold today. I'm standing on the cliff, the one from Mark's calendar. The lighthouse is behind me, painting a long shadow across the grass. "Mama, look!" I look down. Mia is running towards me, holding a seagull feather she found in the sand. She is 2.5 now. She has Mark's dark curls and his mischievous grin. She is wearing a bright yellow raincoat and rain boots that are slightly too big. She is happy. She is healthy. She is thriving. We didn't just survive. We built a life. I own a small percentage of the bakery now. Betty wants to retire soon and she's teaching me how to take over. I have friends, real friends, the kind who don't care about your job title, but care about your heart. I still talk to Mark every day. I tell him about the new recipe I tried. I tell him about the funny thing Mia said. I tell him about the man who asked me out for coffee last week and how I said maybe and how that felt like a betrayal and a victory all at once. I don't know if I'll ever move on in the way people talk about. You don't move on from a love like that. You grow around it. It becomes part of your foundation, like the roots of a tree. I pick Mia up. She's getting heavy. She wraps her arms around my neck and buries her cold nose in my cheek. "Who do you love?" I ask her. Our little game. "Mama," she shouts. "And who else?" "Daddy." She points to the sky. She knows him from pictures. She knows him from my stories. He is her guardian angel. I look out at the vast, churning Pacific Ocean. The waves crash against the rocks, relentless and powerful. I think back to that woman on the kitchen floor doing CPR, screaming for her life to not end. I think back to the widow sitting in the dark, paralysed by bills and judgment. I wish I could go back and hug her. I wish I could tell her, hold on, just hold on. The pain won't go away, but you will get bigger than the pain. They tried to break us. Life tried to break us. Death tried to break us. But here we are, standing on the edge of the world, breathing the salt air. Alive. I kiss Mia's forehead. Let's go home, baby girl, I say. We have dough to rise. She giggles and we turn back toward the town, walking away from the edge, hand in hand. My name is Sneha. I am a mother. I am a widow. I am a survivor. And this is not a tragedy. This is a love story. A story about loving someone enough to let them go and loving yourself enough to keep going. Life is brutal. Yes, it will knock you down, steal your breath and leave you bleeding in the dirt. But if you can find one reason to stand up, just one tiny 34-day-old reason, you can rewrite the ending. We made it, Mark. We made it.